Welcome to the budget work session. Bridget, would you say the pledge for us, please?
States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Turned over to staff.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. So we are here for the work sessions for the fiscal year 27 budget process. And did have a presentation.
If I can interrupt just a second, Cynthia, if you have anything, just keep yelling until we recognize you.
Thank you,
Uh-oh.
I will.
She disappeared.
Brought the presentation up, so. Okay. So we do have this scheduled for today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, starting at 3 if we need all that. Last year, we only needed 2 days. I think it might have been 2.5 days. So we'll see how it goes and how many questions that you might have. So this is the agenda. We did a little bit of changing up from last year as far as the order of how we're going to go through this. We're going to start with overview and the big picture of where the numbers are at, looking at the individual fund summaries. Then we're going to go through all the CIP budget requests at once, and then all the supplemental requests at once. And then we'll go through the base budget amounts for the departments and then the wrap up at the end. So here I have listed what the goals are of the work session. So first of all, council needs to understand what is proposed in the budget that they're being asked to approve. The legal requirement is that no expenditure can be made for a purpose not authorized in the adopted budget. The forms that the state provides for that are very high level. So it's at department level. So as long as there's a budget for a department, then you basically authorize it. And we'll go into a little more detail in what we're doing, but that's what we have as far as meeting the legal requirement. The budget also determines what our cap is when we adopt the tentative. It becomes the max for what the final budget adoption can be. The town has been operating under home rule for a while. The latest voter approval for home rule was back in August of 24. And that 4-year authorization is valid through fiscal year 29. So we have a couple more years to go after this. Also, we need to talk about the town's financial capacity for addressing priorities. The legal requirement is that the budget must be balanced, and I will be showing you that it is balanced. And then also council providing direction regarding any desired changes to the budget. So this is a high level look at what the structure is for the budget. We've been following this process for a little while. We have the base budget, which is operating, and we're using what the fiscal year 26 adopted budget amount is as our baseline with the current programs and service levels. Supplemental requests are for the operating budget that is to add new programs or to enhance service levels. And staff is required to fill out some forms to justify their requests for those supplementals. And then we have the capital side of the budget, the capital improvement plan, which is essentially all of the significant capital assets and studies that lead to assets, such as the integrated utility master plan was one of those studies. The cost of a capital improvement project is $100,000, exceeds $100,000, and has a useful life of 3 years or more. So budget books were provided for you, and there is an electronic version on the website. For the hard copy version that you have in the front pocket, you have a large size of the list of supplementals in that front pocket. Then there are tabs that go through in your book. So you have the overall fund summaries. So we have a summary of all of the funds that comprise the budget. Then we have grand total comparison of all the funds from fiscal year 25 through fiscal year 27. Then we have a summary of what the overall budget changes are from fiscal year 26 to 27. I have a slide, but we'll walk through those. And then each one of the individual funds with the comparisons from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 27, and then a grand total on the personnel schedule for all of the departments. Then the next tab would be the CIP budget. There is a list of those projects that are in that 5-year plan, and then each one of the individual project sheets, detail sheets. Then the next tab is the supplemental request. There is the list again, a smaller size of the list, and then each one of those individual supplemental requests. Then we have the base budgets for the departments, and the order that they are in your book is the order that we're planning on going through discussing them. They start off with what we refer to as the narrative, which has a description of the department, talks about the department's current year accomplishments, next year's goals, and tables of their performance measures. There's also the expenditure summaries of the base budget with the comparisons from fiscal year 25 to 27, and also a comparison of the FTEs within the base budget from 25 through 27 as well. I like to discuss, just to make sure everyone's clear, that a budget and a forecast are not the same thing. I've been asked in the past, like, why numbers change in a forecast. Well, they really should be updated on a regular basis and constantly changing as new information is available. The budget is something that's legally required. It sets the cap of what the expenditures are, and it needs to be adopted by council. And the way Arizona law is, because of the way the caps are, you want to make sure that anything that you possibly might include in the budget is included in the budget. That is the conservative way to handle it. So for instance, with the open space, the 4,000 acres, if we said, oh, we're not even going to include it in the budget at all, then you don't have that budget capacity to do that. So it's kind of hedging our bets of, there's a possibility it could happen in 27 or it might be in 28, but it's in the numbers for 27 because we need to make sure that the cap is high enough. With the budget, when council adopts that, the contracts for those things that are in the budget still need to come to council. It doesn't mean that staff can just go and let a contract without that approval. So we'll go over the proposed budget. So here is a look at the budget numbers, and I'll walk you through this table. So the column, the second column over where it says fiscal year 26 budget, we'll walk through that one. So the beginning of the year for the budget process, we had estimated that the July 1 fund balances would be 31.8 million. We estimated revenues at 38 million. And then other financing sources, which was primarily debt proceeds of 30 million. And then the various estimated reserves are being subtracted out of 17.8 million, which is debt service reserves, equipment replacement reserves, operating reserves, et cetera. So then when we take what we start the year off with, the money that's coming in, backing out the amount of the reserves that we need to hold on to, then the total resources available for appropriation are 82.5 million. The estimated expenditures, the amount that was budgeted for fiscal year 26 was 75.6 million. So we had resources over and above what was budgeted of 6.9 million. So in other words, the budget could have been 6.9 million higher and we would have still been balanced. The way the formulas work, so the estimated ending balance of the 24.7 is taking those reserves at the end of the year of the 17.8 plus that 6.9 of the excess reserves, which gives us the 24.7. When you go over to the next column, so the estimates for fiscal year 26, so this is what we're currently estimating where we will be. The beginning balance, so the fiscal year 25 has been audited. Those numbers are final. So that beginning number at 36.7 is an actual number. So we did better than what was estimated during the budget process. There are several contingencies within the estimated revenues and some things that are down lower than what was anticipated at budget time, which we'll be going through. So estimated 27 million. The other financing sources, 11.9, and the reserves available at the end of the year, 25.9. So that puts us at total resources estimated being available at 55.6, with expenditures estimated at 43.6. So that leaves excess resources better than what was anticipated of 12 million, or estimated ending fund balance better than what was anticipated at 38 million. Then we go over into the base amount for fiscal year 27, and the next column is the supplemental requests that have been recommended being added in. So that preliminary proposed budget in the last column, estimating that we're carrying forward from the fiscal year 26 estimates column, the ending balance of the 38 million, we're carrying that over as our beginning balance for fiscal year 27, estimating revenues 35, other financing sources and the reserves. So total resources available at 85 million. 80 million as estimated expenditures, excess resources available 4.6, so the fund balance of 17.5. So you can see again, based off of the way we calculate the numbers, it has to be based off of a formula, the way each one of those numbers are. And we're estimating revenues, hopefully not overestimating revenues, and having a cap on the expenditures that would accommodate anything and everything that we think might happen. Then, so then that puts us at a point to where it looks like we're going to have less fund balance than what we typically would do. And so here's some history.
Before you leave that, this is the most important slide on here for me. So are you forecasting 17.5, or is that based, that's with all those, the extra for water and the 4,005 acres and all that sort of?
Yes.
Yeah. And we still have the option to finance to bring that back up if we decided to do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so here's a look at history on how we do compared to our budget. So the first line here is a blue line. So this is how much the budget amounts were. And this is actual information for fiscal year 26 through fiscal year 25. The orange line is what the total expenditures were. So you can see our expenditures were well below what the amount was that was budgeted in each one of those years. The kind of greenish line there, so you can see that for fiscal year 22 through 24, our fund balances were more than even 1 year's worth of expenditures, and a little bit of a change there in fiscal year 25. So very, very strong, very, very high fund balance amounts. So moving into the proposed expenditures, this is looking at by type. So of the 80 million amount for the proposed budget, you can see the biggest piece of the pie is that lighter blue portion, the capital improvement projects at 44 million. And then the personnel cost is about 10% at 8 million. Ongoing non-personnel costs, 21% of the pie at about 17, and the other ones are smaller pieces, debt service at 5.2 million. And we have built in their contingencies of 4.2 million. So we've been having a $1.2 million contingency in the general fund, and then we've been having a $3 million contingency for any unknown grants that might show up during the year.
Sherry, if you don't mind, ongoing non-personal, basically what would that be?
Supplies, anything where we're relying on contracted services like janitorial, any of those types of things, utility costs, anything and everything that needs to be part of what we spend on a regular basis. The
Right.
one-time are those things where it's like, tends to be like one-time contracts, like a consultant service type thing. Here's looking at the 80 million of the expenditures by fund. And so with the capital improvements fund, that kind of purplish one at about 29%, the 4,000 acres is in that number, which is why that piece of the pie looks so big. In previous years, when we didn't have the 4,000 acres, you had the utilities being at least 50%, if not more, of the pie. So that huge number in there shrinks their portion of the pie just a little bit. And you can see most of the other funds are fairly small. The general fund is at 17% of that total budget, and streets is at 3.6 million. So here's looking at what is changed in the budget from the fiscal year 26 adopted to the fiscal year 27 proposed. And I have a couple numbers in red. We had made a last minute change. So what's the amount that was on page overall -3 in that first section is not going to match on those two numbers there in the red because of the last minute change. So the operating budget going from 37.2 down to 36.1 is 3% decrease. One of the biggest decreases there is related to the MAG grant for the pavement management projects. That was a one-time project. And then there's also a decrease for the one-time fire costs for the regional station. So that's a big part of what those changes are there. The CIP budget is going from 38.4 million to 44.2 million, a 15% increase. So the Cave Creek Water CIP projects, the net difference is 3.8 million. The biggest part of that is adding a project for new water resources. The Phoenix Interconnect does finish up. There's a little bit of carryover on the Phoenix Interconnect project, but that large number for the Phoenix Interconnect is offsetting that huge amount for the water resources. There is a bit of a decrease in the placeholder for the state land acquisition. So having a more updated appraisals and more information, we know that we're going to have to do more appraisals. So we do have some buffer built in on that, but we did reduce it some by 3.5 million. And then there's the increase in the placeholder for the town hall remodel expansion of 5.2 million. So in total, the budget going from 75.6 million to 80.4, which is a 6% increase. I do have information here on the FTEs. There, in the proposed budget, there is no change in the FTEs or the allocation. So 60 FTEs, 7 of those are town council. You can see on the near the top left, there's wastewater, Desert Hills Water, Cave Creek Water. The utilities make up a fairly significant piece of the pie there. Do want to point out that the turnover has been high over the past several years. So I had gone back to fiscal year 21 when it was at 30%. We got a little better in 22. Fiscal year 23, it jumped up to 36%. Then we got better in 24 and even better in 25. The year to date, we're at 17%. So going up and the year's not over yet. So there's the potential of that number going even higher on the turnover. So part of what we've included in the payroll assumptions, so based off of an average of 3% for a cost of living adjustment. So we're using averages because there can be vacancies that would not see that 3%. It's based off of performance. So if anyone is not meeting expectations, they would not get a cost of living adjustment. And they have to be with the town for 6 months in order to be eligible for the cost of the living adjustment, which with the turnover that we've had, there would be several employees that would not be eligible. We have a merit adjustment averaged at 2.5% included. The health insurance, so based off of our experience, they did increase our health insurance by about 9.5%. And we did put in also a vacancy savings offset because of that turnover that we're seeing and because of positions that we're not expecting to fill right away that are currently vacant. And there would potentially be some savings in the next year. So we estimated an offset, a reduction of 250,000 on that budget. Moving to the revenues and the other financing sources. So we have budgeted 60 million. The biggest piece of the pie, that lighter green, is debt financing of 24 million, which is 40% of the pie. About 12 million of that is the placeholder of debt financing for the open space, the 4,000 acres. And then the other 12 million is a placeholder for possible new water resources. The TPT taxes at 14 million make up about 24% of the pie. State shared revenue at 2.6 makes up about 4%. And the utility charges are 11.6 million or 19% of the pie.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sir.
Do we still get HERF monies? And if so, how much roughly?
The HERF amount is about 380,000.
See, that's going down. It was 500,000 not too long ago.
So as there are more and more hybrid and electric vehicles that are using less and less gas, it is having an impact because the amount that we get for the HERF is based on a fixed amount. That tax is a fixed amount per gallon. So it's based off of the number of gallons that are sold and has no impact based off of what the price of the fuel is, other than higher prices mean people tend to drive a little less.
Also, our slice of the pie keeps getting smaller because the larger cities that are on a growth mode, their slice is getting bigger. So if you think of HERF and you think of how much money is generated each year, the cities that are on, they're growing more than the state average. Their slice is getting more. So they're getting more revenues distributed to them. So we're going to, since we have modest growth, we're not keeping up, growth wise population with the large, fast growing cities in Arizona,
But we are still growing.
but not at a fast enough rate to recover what the other cities are taking.
And I do have a slide. I want to say it's like around 11,000 is also our reduction because of the incorporation of Santan Valley.
That's true.
Okay. All right. So looking at the TPT revenue assumptions. In speaking with Bo, he works closely with the Visitor Center Tourism Bureau, and tourism is down from prior year. So we're seeing that impact on our TPT revenue. Other things to note. So residential rental did in December of 24. The 2% increase in the hotel TPT would affect February of 26. The 1% in bed tax was February 26 as well. And if in the November election, if the item that will be on the ballot related to food tax is approved, then that means that we would be grandfathered at our 3% and we would not be able to increase our food tax from that point. So looking at the amounts, so in the projections for fiscal year 26, we had estimated a modest 2% increase. Well, it's been less than that. It's been a 1% increase. And I have a slide for you, but that's less than what the inflation has been. Bed tax has seen some increase, and construction has gone down some. And so the table there at the bottom shows you how much was budget compared to how much I'm estimating that we'll have for the year compared to what I'm showing for the budget. So showing that the town sales tax is going to come in about 600,000 less than what was anticipated. In this chart, so the blue bars are the actual dollars, and the orange bars are calculations based off of constant dollars or trying to eliminate that impact of inflation. So I used the July 2021, which was the beginning of fiscal year 22, as that base for the CPI amount. And then for the fiscal year 26, so it's been the CPI has been at 2.7% for a couple months. And so I just assumed 2.7% for the remainder of fiscal year 26 in my estimates. And so you can see from the blue bars, yeah, there's some growth there, the little bit of dip in fiscal year 26, but you do see more of that dip when you're taking out the inflationary aspects. So the volume of what's being sold and the amount collected is going down. So we're at 9.5 million when you look at it, taking out the inflationary impact, which is less than fiscal year 22, which was 9.9 million. All right, so here's our state shared revenue. And so state sales tax, again, also is seeing some very modest amounts in their growth compared to what we had expected. The urban revenue sharing has shown some decreases based off of some adjustments that they had made, but they are projecting an 8% increase. The state is for fiscal year 27. The vehicle license tax, the projections were flat, but we're showing that there is some increase. And then you can see highway user tax, there is a little bit of a decrease for the fiscal year 26 estimate, and then also a decrease in the 27. So the Santan Valley, the estimates that we have based off of information that's been provided by the state and the league. So the state sales tax, okay, so I was remembering incorrectly. State sales tax is the impact about 11 million. HERF is only 2 million. And the state income tax is 13.5. They're also estimating that our impacts related to what they refer to as conformity for income taxes at the state level with the federal income taxes. So the one big beautiful bill, if they were to go with conformity with that, they're estimating about 66,000 in loss in our urban revenue sharing. The utility revenue. So we are seeing some decreases in the utility revenues. Cave Creek water, 10% decrease. Desert Hills water, 8%. Wastewater, 1%. I am including projections from there for fiscal year 27 because of rate increases, but I'm factoring in also less usage. The water usage is down, and so we're guessing that some of it's going to be the weather because some of the milder weather that we had, people probably used water less. We think the AMI meters have had an impact because leaks are getting caught faster. So that would translate into less water usage. And so I'm assuming some continued decrease in the water usage. And then I'm also assuming a decrease for accounts that will be transferred to City of Phoenix that we are currently serving, but those are anticipated to be transferred to Phoenix come July 1. So when we went through the last rate study, we said, depending upon how conservation efforts go, which we haven't even really gotten that far into conservation efforts, but the AMI meters believe are having an impact, that we would need to do another rate study soon. And so this is demonstrating that I think we really are going to need to be able to do that sooner rather than later on the rates. Okay, so going into the funds. So the town is required to follow governmental fund accounting. There are accounting standards specific to that. And what we do in governmental accounting is we treat individual funds like as if they're separate entities in order to be able to track how specific resources are used. So there's two different categories, governmental and proprietary. Proprietary are structured more like business accounting, whereas the governmental do not fall into that kind of category and they're not treated that way as far as the accounting rules are concerned. The general fund is where the majority of the operations of the town occur. The special revenue funds have monies that are restricted. So like in the streets fund, there's HERF money that's restricted, there's grants, and then there's the restrictions on the spur cross monies for that fund. The capital project funds, so major capital projects, we track those separately in the capital improvements fund. And the proprietary funds, so there's two different types of proprietary funds. We only have enterprise funds, which means we serve external customers, is essentially what that is. So we have the utility funds and we have the rodeo grounds fund. You will see in the numbers ongoing versus one-time, ongoing things that typically happen every year, one time, not so much. So capital outlay, debt costs, one-time studies, anything that's not annual, revenues, anything that's a significant non-recurring revenue, we would put in one time. So in looking at that, here is looking at the structural balance of the general fund for ongoing resources versus ongoing costs. On the left-hand side are the ongoing resources. So we have the ongoing revenues of 14 million, the ongoing transfers from Spur Cross, so about 1.5 million. So that's total resources of 15.8. On the right-hand table, those are the ongoing costs. So ongoing expenditures, about 12.3 million. Ongoing transfer to the streets fund because we're not going to get enough HERF dollars to cover all the streets costs. So that's 2 million. And sorry, that was a I didn't edit the label there. It's not Trails Fund, it's the Rodeo Grounds Fund. We don't expect that the Rodeo Grounds Fund will be able to cover 100% of the cost, but we want to see how close we can get. And so that's 116,000 there. So that's 14.4 million on the ongoing cost. So the net ongoing is a positive 1.3, almost 1.4 million. Looking at the one-time costs within the general fund. So on the left-hand side, this is the net of our one-time of 6.2 million. So we have placeholders for contingencies, the supplementals that are one-time. There's one-time streets transfer of 500,000, and the subsidies to the utilities, which is about 5 million, and one-time transfer to the rodeo grounds of 130, and we do have some one-time revenues of 1.1 to offset those costs. So on the right-hand side, the top table is looking at if we did not have the utility subsidies, our net ongoing from the previous page here, the 1,384,000. So that net ongoing, and if we take the net one time without the subsidies of about 1.2 million, that gives us an actual increase to our fund balance of about 200,000. However, we do have the utility subsidies, and so the total net one-time reduction puts us at reducing fund balance at 4.8 million. So those subsidies are pretty significant that we're doing to the utilities at this point in time. Looking at the general fund reserves and the restricted balances. So the operating reserve for the general fund is 25% of operating expenditures or 3.1 million. The policy does say that if some of the other funds are not able to cover their operating reserves, then the general fund will cover it for them. So that's 3.3 million that's being covered for streets, utilities, and rodeo grounds. There's an equipment replacement reserve, small amount that is based off of an annual allocation of 1 year of useful life. We just started that last year, so it's not a lot of money in there yet, but we will continue to contribute to that to help it grow. And the very small amount related to the capital expenditures fund that we have to hold for Southwest Gas, and then the amount that we're estimating for the cash, the negative cash loan, as of June 30, 2027 for Desert Hills, we're estimating 596,000. Beyond those reserves, the total amount of the general fund balance has the amount over and above reserves of 5.6 million. There are some carryovers within the general fund that we're carrying over some budget amounts. So we're anticipating that the professional services agreement for the IFB for the utilities, that it will not be complete as of June 30. There would be some amount carrying over into the next year. So we've got 28.5 thousand carrying over, and there's about 2,000 that will be carrying over for the 40th anniversary. The match for the MAG grant for the streets, the pavement management, there's about 90,000 that we will be carrying over. So moving on to the streets fund. So part of what was discussed in last year's budget process is that we would build up an operating reserve over time by transferring exactly how much was budgeted for the year, knowing that not necessarily all of that would be needed, and that it would start working on building up some reserves in the streets fund. So as of June 30, 2026, we're estimating about 355,000. In order to reach the 25% of the operating costs as of June 30, 2027, there's another 224,000 that would be covered by the general fund. In order to accomplish the streets fund and balance all of that out, it requires a transfer from the general fund of about 2.5 million. The Spur Cross Fund. So the annual maintenance costs within the fund that happens each year with the balance after that is spent is expected to be about 2 million. And last year, council had approved an ordinance that 500,000 would go to the capital improvements fund for open space, whether it's to acquire open space or to help pay debt service. And then the balance would go to the general fund, which would be the 1.5. The grants and other restricted fund, so not a whole lot in there. We have the lottery funding that goes to the Foothills Caring Corps. We have the Prop 207 Smart and Safe funding, which is restricted. It must be things for supplementing the law enforcement, public safety. The opioid settlement fund, those monies are restricted on how they could be spent, and then the 3 million that is just a placeholder for any unknown grant. On the capital improvements fund, so we took the open space acquisition fund, and in our accounting records, it's separate, but for presentation purposes, it is rolled into the CIP fund. The project that is in the budget for the open space for the 4,000 acres assumes that the 1.6 million that's in that fund would be spent towards that open space. The other funding for the open space includes an estimated debt financing of 12.3 million, donations and other funding of about $1 million, and then the annual spur cross transfer of about $1 million. And then also resources that we are contributing to the capital improvements fund, 1/2 of the construction sales tax revenue, which equates to 1.3 million, is how much that we're putting into. And that was something that was discussed in the budget process last year to be building the capital improvements fund that way. The reserves within the capital improvements fund, so equipment replacement reserve of 1.5 million. That includes the annual allocation of 1 year, but we're also, because we know the cost of replacing the fire equipment, the fire vehicles, is going to be very significant. So we're contributing those estimated amounts now for those future items. And then the capital reserve, 1.6 million, which part of the balancing when I'm looking at is for the CIP, the 5-year CIP, do we have enough money in there for what is expected in the fiscal year 28? And so we do exceed how much is needed for the fiscal year 28 with the projected annual resources. Moving on to Cave Creek Water Fund, looking at the ongoing resources versus ongoing costs. So there's a net ongoing of a positive 1 million. The debt service is at 2.8 million. So that's a net after debt service of a negative 1.7, almost 1.8. In order to accomplish what we have here in the fund, excuse me, it requires 12 million of debt financing for new water resources, 2.9 million transfer from general fund to help cover CIP debt service costs, the debt service reserve requirements, and equipment replacement reserves. In order to cover that net after the debt service, it would mean a cumulative rate increase of about 30%. And if we were going to have a rate increase to eliminate the general fund subsidy, the cumulative rate increase would be 48% to eliminate the 2.9 general fund subsidy.
But that is we're on the cusp of this is the last year for a lot of those bonds that we accumulate money. 27 July 1's our last payment on number, and then they roll off between July 1, 27 and July 31 of 3030, and that's a total of 5 million. So
no, it's not 5 million in debt service. So our total debt service for all of them is the 5 million.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
All the utilities.
For all of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so that overstates, if you do it on a 1 year basis, that's one thing. But if you wait till those things roll off, we'll have a lot more cash on hand, better cash flow once those.
I have some
debt service-
slides that'll show, because we talked about that we would be doing the debt financing of all projects for the utilities going forward, and it builds back up very quickly.
Okay.
So on the reserves for Cave Creek Water, so the equipment replacement reserve, 119,000. Again, that's that annual allocation of 1 year of the useful life. Debt service reserve, about 1.7 million. And in order to have no debt service reserve requirement, we'd have to be able to demonstrate that we would have 1.5 times coverage, which does involve some fairly significant rate increases to get there. The operating reserve, so there is no amount left over in the Cave Creek Water Fund to fund that operating reserve at this point in time. It would need to be 1.2 million for the operating reserve, so that is part of what general fund is covering. Cave Creek Water has a budget carryover of 50,000 for the water conservation program in the current year. When we were going through the budget last year, there was the amounts for the one-time initial setup for the water conservation program and then ongoing after that. So we do have this 50,000 carryover for the setup. Desert Foothills ongoing resources versus ongoing costs. So the net ongoing is about 600,000 for Desert Hills, debt service of about 900,000. So the net after debt service would be a negative through about 300,000. It does require a cumulative about 596,000 cash loan. So cash is different than our fund balance impact. And from general fund to help cover the debt service, other one-time costs, equipment replacement reserves, and then those ongoing cash deficits. To cover that 295,000 net after the debt service would be a cumulative rate increase of 7%. And if we wanted to eliminate the general fund cash loan, that would require a cumulative rate increase of about 15%. Desert Hills is one that they, over the years, have had much more significant rate increases year after year compared to Cave Creek Water. So that has helped them be in a better position financially.
Sherry, tell me the I think I know what it is, but the logic behind using general fund cash to fund reserves for units that are not covering.
It's really the cash. It's a cash loan.
Yeah, but it's just, it would be sitting in our reserves or be sitting in their reserve in the fund reserve, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah. And that is to, I know that there are groups in the state who look at those general fund reserves and say, gosh, we need to cut back the money that's coming from the state. Is that part of the philosophy here to keep that?
Yeah, and the equipment replacement reserve is only $5,000. We're not talking a whole lot of money.
Well, I'm talking about the 56,
The estimated 596 cash loan.
yeah, putting money. I mean, why are we putting money in Desert Hills from our general fund? That has the ring of something that you shouldn't do.
So the way that we operate is we have a pool of our cash and investments, and any fund that has a negative basis within that pool, we are required to show that as borrowing from another fund. So we always do general fund because general fund is unrestricted, and show it as that borrowing comes from the general fund.
Still not sure I understand that, but
So this is their estimated balance within the cash and investment pool, that they would have a deficit position
so they will
of
be
596,000. Not that we have a bank account with a negative dollar amount. That's not what it is. So we have a pool. We have just the one checking account. We have our investments, all those various things that are pooled together so that we get better rates. And so this fund's portion of that pool is a negative.
yeah. So we're giving them money and they're earning the money on it. And it shows as a revenue for Desert Hills. Is that correct?
No, it's not. It's not in their revenues. So
You're showing interest revenue. You're showing interest revenue for the proprietary funds now. Some of them.
So yeah, so a little bit because they do have their separate fund where they have their debt service reserve amount. So there is some interest related to that.
So Desert Hills has never made a dime. And so are they going to be showing any interest income off of,
Off of their negative position? No, we don't allocate for negative positions in the pool. Okay. So with the reserves, it was 11,000 for the equipment replacement reserve, the capital reserve, 19,000, which is really the amount being held by the trustee for the estimated balance of the proceeds of the series 2025 debt as of June 30, 2027. The debt service reserve requirement of 467,000, and then no operating reserve. It would need 3 months. Operating expenditures would be about 850,000, which would require additional general fund cash loan if we were to fund that.
okay, that's what I was looking for there.
There is 50,000 carryover here because that water conservation program, the amounts were split 50-50 between Cave Creek Water and Desert Hills Water. Moving on to the wastewater fund, so the ongoing resources, ongoing costs. So the net ongoing for wastewater is negative at $500,000, and then the debt service of about 1.4 million. So that puts it at the net after the debt service of a negative 1.9. This requires $2.2 million transfer from the general fund to help cover the CIP, the debt service, operating costs, equipment replacement reserve. If we were to just cover the net ongoing, that $500,000, that would be a cumulative rate increase of 30%. To cover the amount after the debt service of about 2 million, that's a cumulative rate increase of 117,000. And if we wanted to eliminate the 2.2 million subsidy from the general fund, that would require a cumulative rate increase of 129%. So we knew that the wastewater fund was in worse shape financially. The reserve, so equipment replacement reserve, about 59,000. Capital reserve, 800,000. This is the amount that we're estimating would be held by the trustee as of June 30, 2027, unspent of that series 2025 at that point. The operating reserve, zero. It's 550,000 of what that reserve would be and is covered by the general fund. For the rodeo grounds, so the net ongoing is a negative 116,000. We are doing a $246,000 transfer from the general fund to cover that ongoing amount, but also the CIP project that is in there. Last week we had public information meeting on the budget. We presented the preliminary budget and the historical budget information. We covered some of the things that we've already covered here this afternoon about the budget structure. We went through the list of supplemental requests and CIP projects. And so a couple things from citizen recommendations. So one was to increase the grant contingency from 3 million to 4 million. I don't know when that 3 million has even been used. So I don't know if other than just raising the budget even higher would be the only reason that I can see to do that. And then another comment that was brought up was about trying to help get greater awareness of public information meetings because particularly the one last week was not very well attended. Sometimes they're better attended, other times there aren't, but that was one of the comments that was brought up last
How many
week.
people were there?
There was
staff.
Yes, there was staff. There was a few council members. There was at least one candidate and one member of the public who was
You
not.
gotta wonder
a
if that's
candidate.
cost effective then. So
Well, I just think good
it's
government
useless.
practices you want to be transparent. So I do think it's one of those boxes we check that we've done. So
It's a waste of resources. Continue.
All right, so we'll move into the CIP budgets unless there's any other questions about the big picture. Okay. So from a overall look at the CIP, so the portion that's in fiscal year 27, the amount that we are legally required to appropriate, that budget amount is 44 million. There's 37 projects, and I have them ranked here in from largest to smallest. The top one is Cave Creek Water, 17 projects, but in that 18 million, 12 million of it is related to new water resources. The land acquisition is just the one project for the open space, the 4,000 acres that we have the placeholder of the 16 million. And then the municipal facilities, 2 projects there. The 6.3 includes 6.2 million as a placeholder for the town hall remodel expansion. And then
if I may on that, Mayor and Council, in light of the uncertainty that what's going on with respect to the invitation for bid on the utilities and also the water situation, what's happening with CAP and water reductions maybe. I am recommending that we have the town hall budget, or I'm sorry, the town hall project budgeted, but that we're not going to do any work on that. We're going to postpone doing anything. We're going to suspend that project for next fiscal year. in light of the possibility that we may have to do water acquisition that might be more than what we're budgeting for water acquisition. So in other words, the money's there, it's budgeted, but until we get a clearer picture of what's going on with water and the possibility of having to buy additional water resources, I think it's just best just to leave it as is. But staff has been instructed not to proceed with that at this time. Any questions before we move on with that?
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
well thought out.
Okay, the other categories there on this slide, Desert Hills Water and Down, they're much smaller dollar amounts and make up the remaining balance of the projects. Looking at the funding sources, so for that 44 million, debt financing is budgeted at 30 million, 30.7. That's 70% of the resources to be able to cover that 44 million. There are the proceeds of the Series 2025 that has already been issued that would be funding several of the CIP projects during the fiscal year 27, and then the two other amounts that we had discussed earlier. So the 12 million for the new water resources and the 12 million for the open space. The other categories that are there are mostly pretty small. The capital reserves is the next biggest category at 7.9 or 18% of that 44 million budgeted. So in order to be able to accomplish the 5-year plan and the amounts that we are talking about with the debt, so we're looking at new debt within that 5-year time frame of about 66 million. The estimated debt service would be 5.1 million. For the open space, we do have the 500,000 that would go towards offsetting the debt service amount. And so that would bring how much we'd be paying outside of those revenues of 200,000. So a net increase in debt service costs of 4.6 million.
Can I ask a question? What is this chart? Sorry, what does this chart show? I don't mean numerically, but what activity are we showing here?
So the top line, the capital improvements fund is the open space, the 4,000 acres. Yes.
Okay.
And then Cave Creek Water. So within there's 12 million of the new water resources, but there are a whole lot of other projects, and I have some slides on the other projects that are in there. And then Desert Hills and wastewater. So a variety of projects there that would end up needing to be debt financed. So this would be new in addition to existing debt that would need to be issued to be able to cover these projects.
So I do have a question. So we're roughly taking $4.5 million of new debt related to the water funds and the wastewater fund, and we're rolling off 5 million roughly.
It would be less than 5 million because about 600,000 of that is Phoenix Interconnect.
So we're roughly break even. on the
Exactly.
debt.
So of the existing debt, so here's what we would have, and it's the utility funds, 27 million. And so it shows the WIFA and the direct placement obligations, and Cave Creek Water is the biggest it's the biggest fund there. But the revenue bonds through WIFA or loan through WIFA is the biggest there, the 13.8. In looking at the debt that's outstanding, so here's Cave Creek Water with the list of what those are, and I have a couple of recommendations here. So the WIFA loan, the 2007A, which is funded with the revenues of the system. So the last payment will be 7/1 of 2027. And I have spoken with the representative at WIFA, and if we pay that amount early, so that balance for that final payment would be the 844,000 for the principal and 30,000 for the interest. We would not have to pay the full 30,000 for the interest if we paid it sooner. So I'm suggesting that July, August, early in the year, that we go ahead and pay off that WIFA loan, and have some savings on the interest and use the debt service reserves for that particular loan, to be able to make that payment. And then I'm also saying that depending on interest rates, so the 2007B, so that's a WIFA loan that was using a pledge of the excise tax revenue. And so there is no debt service reserve to use towards paying that. So pulling money out of investments, I'm saying, I think we would look at what interest rates are at the time early in the year. And if it makes sense to pay off a loan that's at 3.6, then I think we should. And if it doesn't make sense to pay off a loan at 3.6, then we would not. For Desert Hills, so the WIFA loan for 2007, similar, I'm suggesting that we use the debt service reserves to pay that one off early in the year. And wastewater, some of these are really low, so we're not going to see interest rates that low that it doesn't really make sense to call them early. And looking at our pledged revenue coverage, so this is from the audit. The Desert Hills WIFA loans was 2.95, so we were in a good point there. Cave Creek WIFA loans 3.47, and then our excise tax obligation 6.69. So we have been in a good position on our coverages. So going back to the CIP and all of these projects that would be looking at a lot of debt financing. So we have our priority system. So we have priority 1 is imperative or must do. These are things that are typically rather urgent, a need to do based off of public health or safety, legal obligation, et cetera. So here is a list of the imperative projects that are carryover projects. Some of these are being carried over because of just staff capacity. We do have one that is based off of delays with CAP and the Bartlett Dam. So really it's that 44,000 in fiscal year 27 is our final payment on the feasibility study. The other two amounts are future placeholders for the construction costs. And then there was enough imperative carryover projects that they didn't all fit on one slide. So here are a few more. So some of these, the steel storage tank, there was some emergency well repairs that need to be done ahead of this. And for the water meter replacement, the install will be done in fiscal year 27, but we're getting the meters this year. In the imperative priority, there are some that are what would call a new appropriation. So for the vehicle replacement program, the amount in fiscal year 27 that would be appropriated is for a crane truck for wastewater that would need to be paid out of the general fund subsidies because the equipment replacement reserve is not built up enough yet to be able to cover that. The water line, new West Cave Creek water line, does include a carryover for the alignment study, but the actual project itself would be a new appropriation. And then the efficiency measures, so the study is expected to be completed in this fiscal year, but we wanted to have some sort of placeholder in there for anything that we might want to do to help get something implemented, whatever may come out of that study. And then for future projects in the imperative category is the utility master plan. So our priority 2 with CIP is essential or should do. This addresses obsolete public facilities, goals in the strategic plan, maintaining existing natural resources, leveraging outside funding. Those are things that move us into the essential category. So for the carryover projects, we have the land acquisition. This is something that, based off of what state land said, it could be anywhere from 12 to 18 months, what they're estimating for their process. So it could be within the fiscal year. And it could, if it's the 18 months, then it would be fiscal year 28. The Carefree Highway improvements with the IGA with Scottsdale, that's really in Scottsdale's plate right now. It's being delayed by them. There was a scope change for the rehab of the 6-inch water line for Cave Creek Wash. So that pushed that project out. And we had some staff delays and negotiation with developers for the wellhead arsenic treatment and some operational issues at the Ranch Manana lift station that had pushed that project out. Within the essential priority category, so the new appropriation projects, so the fleet replacement program, so the amount in fiscal year 27 is a 50-50 share between utilities and the capital improvements for public works. For a road grader, or no, so that's for the road grader, the out of capital reserves, the 50-50 shares in 28 and 30 for the backhoes. Sorry. Grady had already talked about the town hall remodel, so we do have that budget amount there of the 6.2. We have for the replacements, we've talked about Cassell in the past and how we really would like to be able to replace Cassell. So in talking with Brian, we think that we could possibly get started towards the end of fiscal year 27 on this process and getting some consultants hired to help us out with that. And then we have the Zone 8 pipeline improvement. Also within the essential priority category, so we have a list of things here for the future projects. Do want to point out that on the next to last, the wastewater treatment process improvement, so design for that project would be in 2031, and then beyond that 5-year scope. In fiscal year 32 would be the 2 million for construction. So it is a larger project that's just barely coming into our 5-year timeframe. And then the CIP prioritization is as important. So within the important category, carryover projects, we have the Spurcross bathroom and office. And that's delay with staff capacity and just being able to negotiate something with Maricopa County. And also there's possible grant funding that could be obtained to cover some of those costs.
Is that the first year this has shown up?
No, it was in last year. So we thought we were going to get started on it last year with the design. And then the 40th Street, Galvin, and Via Cassandra streets projects, there was some change in scope, and the timeline is really dependent on state land department. And then there's the new appropriation in this important category that was brought up during the council retreat for right-of-way safety and aesthetics. And so we have a placeholder there of 100,000 each year. And then also within the important priority category, the future projects. So we have improvements to the VIP area at the rodeo grounds, new connection for Military Road Southern Bypass, the Galloway Wash at the Desert Awareness Park, and retrofit of wastewater. But those are all out in later years. They're not in fiscal year 27.
Can I ask a quick question? Can you explain what Military Road Southern Bypass New Connect actually is? Al, it was been
yeah.
talked about for 40 years. I'm curious what it looks like now.
Mayor and Council, this actually showed up in a 2007 transportation plan that we did. It's the connection of military to over to where you'd pop out just behind Harold's. And it's the connection that goes through, if you remember, a subdivision called Piedras Grandes. We didn't have the right of way. We're now talking to them about the possibility about being able to get right of way to grade out a road through there. So we'd have connection from Military and Schoolhouse over to the east side through the south, so that you'd be able to come back up and then go out on Buena Vista.
So if this were completed there, tell me how it would start and where it would go and where it would end.
Okay.
It sounds like Schoolhouse to.
So Schoolhouse,
Road.
follow Military around past 64th or 65th Street. Then there's a piece of missing right of way where the Piedras Grandes or the old pageant grounds were.
Right.
And then it would be the connection over to, is that Sunrise?
Connect you all the way to Carriage,
Yeah,
so you can get all the way.
yeah, you could all come all the way from Schoolhouse, come through Carriage, through Mark Way. And then, but on the east side, it's the connection, Skyline. It was Skyline to, and then go north on Skyline. You'll end up on Buena Vista behind Harold's. And then you would rejoin Cave Creek Road over. on the-
Okay. So with the old days of using Military to go into Carefree, that's never gonna be possible probably at this point, is it? You're gonna come back to Cave Creek Road, but
You come back to Cave Creek Road.
Yeah.
There's another road there that was probably from Bella Vista extended south that was there, but it's never been really dedicated as a right of way. The one that we're talking about, the piece that we're talking about actually showed up maybe in 1986 on a plat that showed it as possible grandfathered road.
is that a current interpretation? Is there a grandfather status?
But that's why we're trying to get the people who own the Piedras Grandes parcels to be able to give us the right of way in a place where they want it and that will work for us. So that's why we've been sort of slow in going this process, because we don't want to spook them.
Does Carefree have a official position on this or?
No, it's all within our town.
Okay, so we're not gonna punch through like we used to do. Up to Hawk Lane or Hawk's
No,
Nest? or-
No, we're going to
Okay.
continue it on to
And so it goes back to
Skyline.
Cape Creek, right?
All Cape Creek.
And then one more question, from Schoolhouse, does it go westward?
Yes, it goes from Schoolhouse. You can take Mark Way over to Carriage and then it will pop back out on Cave Creek Road. So there is a way to go, to go from Cave Creek to Cave Creek without following Cave Creek Road all the way through.
And then on the west side, where does it come out?
On the west side, Carriage?
It's as far south as Carriage.
Okay,
Yes,
well, that's pretty amazing, don't you think?
yes. It did show up in a 2007 master plan. So we're trying to, bring it up, bring it by 2027 or 2028. Hopefully we could, only 20 years to get there. So
So
That's,
are you gonna do a traffic impact with Bella Vista and Galloway? Because I know we're already having problems with people getting out of both of those locations now.
yeah, we are looking at the Galloway. The Galloway one is the one that's a concern, and over on Rancho Manana, we have a study being done on Rancho Manana right now.
No, well, but you're, by creating the bypass, you're gonna create another one at Bella Vista.
Very possibly.
You're going to need a lot of public information and customer contact ahead of time.
Yeah, so right now our goal is to try and get the right of way. And then once we have the right of way, it's been Piedras Grandes. I worked on that project 22 years ago as a private consultant. It hasn't moved off that dime, so I'm not really looking at it. I'm looking at trying to get it tied up. And then hopefully not another 20 years before it can finally be done. But we're putting money in the budget in hopes that we can get that last piece of right of way. And then we can go through as part of the design, the public information.
Do you consider this a safety issue?
I do, because if something happens on Cave Creek Road, we punched a northern bypass through. that is very lightly traveled, but it is there. We don't have a southern bypass, and that was actually recommended more highly in the 2007 study. So I do feel that it would be good to have a southern bypass, so we're not just totally reliant upon Cave Creek Road to get people from the west part of our town to the east part of our town.
Mhm. How many houses do you need to contact or owners for this?
Well, it would increase, if you want to increase everyone on military,
I just meant for the right of way.
or just the new right of way,
Yeah.
probably on Skyline, probably about 10. It's not a major impact. But if you also include the possibility of increased traffic on military, that'd probably add about another 30
homes.
homes.
Yeah.
I think one of the key parts about this project, in addition to providing another way for people to get out, or, you know, if there was some sort of an emergency situation, but the other thing is to bring public safety and fire, you know, to people if Cave Creek Road is jammed up or whatever, that this is another alternative way for first responders to get to people. So I think that's going to have to be part of the messaging when we meet with the public on this.
Right. That's kind of what I was getting at.
Thank you.
Hasn't this also come up for Bike Week for another alternative?
It could be used for that. You know, again, the bypass is for all, would be a, 365-day bypass, not just a bypass for 2-week period, but it could be used for that. I would expect it to be utilized more. And then they're also now widening Hidden Rock to 65th. That's being widened now as part of a development project. So there'll be another lead that will come down to this that's already being constructed with developer money.
Thanks, Al.
Okay. I think that was the end. Yes, that was the end of the slides on CIP. So if there are any other questions on any of those CIP projects?
Sherry,
Yeah.
I have a question.
Oh, Cynthia, go ahead.
Thank you. Just on the rodeo grounds, the general fund subsidies, historically, has that been an annual subsidy for operating cost, or has it just been in recent years with certain projects?
So the current year is the first time that we had the rodeo grounds set up as a separate fund. Prior to that, it was in the general fund, and it has always been in a situation of where it is not fully self-supporting. It was something that once some of those improvements are done, that I know when we did the last user fee study that we had talked about, that we would then look at the rodeo grounds fees and do some adjustments there. But felt like that the improvements need to be in place before we could charge higher rates.
Thank you.
Sure.
I might have missed this, Sherry, sorry. On the Desert Awareness Park, Galloway Wash,
Mhm.
what exactly is that project?
You want to, yes, have.
Because before he gets to the mic, I was there the other weekend, and the restrooms need work, and we need to pay more attention, and we need to potentially allocate money for a regular crew to keep those restrooms clean.
I believe we had some money put in the budget for this year.
Yes.
And so do you know when that project will be done?
That's not my.
Yes, council approved a budget for the renovation of the restrooms that are out there. All the fixtures are 30 years old. The facility has shown its warts with all of the pack rats and other things that get in there and do what they do. So we're on track to have all that work completed before the end of this fiscal year. So we didn't request a carryover.
Okay, but what about regular maintenance? Who performs that?
You just picked a bad weekend. We had rodeo, so both of my facilities guys were 24/7 at the rodeo grounds, getting that facility up to grade for Cave Creek Rodeo. So yeah, we have one facility worker out there daily monitoring the facility and making sure that, you know, toilet paper is stocked, soap
Okay.
stocked,
I didn't realize
raking.
daily.
Yeah,
There's somebody there daily.
at least a couple hours out there just picking up trash, emptying trash. Yeah,
Okay.
Monday through Friday.
Okay, good, thanks.
I have 3 comments. Are you still
Well, the
going?
desert awareness,
Okay.
the other question, that was a flood control project that we had the design, we had received a grant from Flood Control District on. It was one of those where we had a $500,000 grant and an estimated cost of $5 million. And so we decided that we weren't going to go forward at the time. We were reapplying for the grant under their new criteria. But if we don't get the grant, we won't go forward with the project. It's lining of the bank there where we had the avulsion in 2014 and 2018. There next to the Desert Awareness Park, it took out all our riprap. So from basically Galloway to what was known as Petite Acres Trailer Park. If you look at a floodplain map, you'll see that the floodplain doesn't cover the wash. Now it's avulged about 80, there was about an 80-foot to 90-foot avulsion into the private property. And it sort of also took out the any bank protection and a lot of our facilities that we had on the north side of the wash. So the idea was to come back in and do bank protection for that. And we had it, but like I said, we had it budgeted a few years ago. We haven't been able to get flood control to reissue a grant for the matching amount. So that's why that can has been kicked down the road a couple of times, and it's just been kicked down to 28, 29 to until we can get the funding.
I have a few comments and questions. Stagecoach Village parking? Is that, I don't recall seeing that. Is that rolling?
That project is not moving forward. The Stagecoach Village group has not initiated any further direction as proceeding. So we have
Oh,
not.
they talked to me the other day and they thought you were not proceeding.
Interesting.
So we have a communications issue here.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they told me it's still on their radar
Okay.
What's the plan? I'm not even aware of it.
for.
Yeah.
Expanded parking at Desert Awareness Park in exchange for. It's been so long in easement. It's a shared parking agreement is essentially the simplistic way to explain it between the town and Stagecoach Village.
Just for Desert Awareness Park parking?
Well, we would expand parking there. They would be able to use it for their events, that kind of thing. And part of the parking would extend onto Stagecoach Village as well. So that's the issue. So
Would you talk to Mark then and clear up the
I will.
miscommunication?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we need to rectify that in the budget?
If the conversation goes a certain way, yes, there will need to be carried forward from last year's CIP request into this upcoming fiscal year budget.
We'll follow up on this. Thank you, Mayor.
You're there, rodeo grounds. We were going to do a rate study. Now we want we got more money, $800,000 for one, we want $130,000 for the electrical. That's becoming a money pit. And I personally am not in favor of anything grandiose on the at least the Stockman's Club, even though I love Stockman's Club, my favorite place there. But the expenses out there, we need to cover the operating expenses. And we're not doing that. And we had talked, I thought we commissioned a study to address the fees out there so that we would cover the operating expenses out the rodeo grounds. I don't see that having happened.
Mayor, members of council, we have not commissioned a study. We have not been directed to. We are going to look at what the amenities are out there once completed. And I think we're at a degree now where we can. And look at what our competition is in the area and what their fees are, and make sure that we're not pricing ourselves out of, because we have that facility rented from September through May each year, every weekend booked. So
Well, I'm
we
sure
are,
you'll,
we
I'm sure
are.
you'll do a competent job of doing it. I'm just saying,
Right.
let's get it done.
Okay, and the projects, just to be clear, the projects that we have put in the CIP for future years, Stockman's being one of them, is once again not something that the town is doing all by itself.
Okay.
These are projects that other groups such as Cave Creek Rodeo Days, the Hart family, and others have come and said, we want to bring money to the table to improve and do these things. These are not things that we're biting off by ourselves on our own dime in many cases.
Yeah, we just have to watch.
Electric, withstanding electric.
Yeah.
Yeah, the electrical service upgrades are things that we have to do.
But we only use it twice a year. So
Once again, from September to May, every weekend, there's something going on.
I mean, the electrical part is we only use that during.
The biggest demand is, you are correct. There are two major events there a year that demand the electric capacity, but there are 3 other rodeos that occur out there. And if they grow, there's room to grow within that. And we're just at capacity with electrical right now.
Okay.
Do we have an electrician on staff?
Um,
Oh, really?
No, I was gonna try to be cute. No, we do not. Okay.
No, and this is pretty sophisticated stuff. It's requiring basically APS to also put in a transformer. So we're talking basically oversizing the service panel basically for all the electrical needs out there. And we've actually have outgrown what the service panel demand can handle right now. So
That's it for you. The second the next thing is execution. Every year we put in all these imperative, we have to do these projects, and every year we don't do them. So either they're not imperative or we can't get it done. So why don't we just do what we can do or increase our capacity to get CIP work done?
Good.
What I don't want to have is every year have these budgets that are real big and we never have even a chance of getting it done. So something's got to give there. It's just a good management practice to do what you say you're going to do.
I agree. So we'll work on that. And Mayor, it's a very good point, and we thought about that even the last couple of years when we are looking at CIP, that we've never been able to actually take on the dollar value and the number of projects that we always put in the budget. So good point.
I have a question. This may be for Luke. Is there pedestrian access between the Desert Awareness Park and Stagecoach Village? There's a wash that goes between there, I think.
Yes.
There is.
Yes.
Okay. But only during times when there's not water in the wash, would that be?
Which is
Most of
760 days a year.
Yeah.
I have a question
Yeah,
for
go
Luke.
ahead.
I have a question for Luke as well. It's a brief question, Luke. We talked about, since we're talking about the wash back there in Desert Awareness Park and parking. We talked the other day about TC's 4 acres that's over there. Have we ever actually been quoted a price on that 4 acres that could be used for parking?
No, the town has engaged the owner about purchasing that from him in the past, but not in the last maybe 5 years.
Did he give us a price at that time?
No, he laughed.
Well, maybe it's time to make another effort, I think, personally. That would be the biggest parking home run we could hit ever with the town core.
The second thing is this equipment. I am highly, highly skeptical that we have the right economic optimum for buying equipment that just sits in the yard. I don't know, we have 3 or 4 employees, and I don't know how many pieces of equipment we have, but the utilization is extraordinarily low. And I'd like to see every the equipment part, like the road grader, I lived here 25 years and I've seen it on the road one time. And so I am highly skeptical that that's an economic solution versus contracting that work out. And I look at the fact that the TPT tax is not increasing. Our proportion of the state shared revenues are not increasing. They're up 1% and we want 5% for our personnel. We got 4%. The average increase I see in the budget is 4%. That can't continue. I mean, at some point you're going to run out. And so the trend is the wrong way. And I just think we have to really consider contracting this stuff, especially stuff that's not used every day.
Right.
There's standard way, and Sherry, you know this, there's standard ways of analyzing that.
So there's a couple like attachments to your point. I believe it was like the 80 grand that was that the backhoe?
Yeah, that's in the operating budget. I think he's
Okay.
referring to the road grader.
Okay. Did you want to?
It's the 500,000 a year in the program there. And I really don't want I don't want to discuss it. I don't want,
Well,
this is not an
I'd
argument.
like to hear.
Okay, come on,
I'd like to
come on.
hear the usage of it.
Mayor and council, yeah, we do use the road rip blade, almost on a weekly basis, at least during, monsoons. It's imperative to clean the roads and the washes. We have, 100 miles of roads. All of them have shoulders. We grade all the shoulders with them. We've used it for any large grading projects, like all of our parking lots. We don't use it very often in your neighborhood because they're not dirt roads, but it does get used quite a bit. It is a very expensive piece of equipment, but it's also 30 years old. So it's one of those things that.
All I'm saying, like I say, we've used words to explain this. This is a numbers economic analysis. It's not a battle, an argument, or opinions or anything.
Right.
We need numbers and analysis to justify things like this. We can't spend $500,000 a year. This equipment program is $500,000 a year. That's just too much.
Understood.
Yeah. Okay. So when it comes back, I want to see numbers, not opinions.
Yes, sir.
That's
You
it.
know, and I want to make
Oh.
a comment that given the way that we have so many street level crossings, having this equipment available to the town is important. We have a lot of people who do not have access to their homes when the washes have deposited material on Spurcross Road, on Schoolhouse Road. Those need attention. So this is partly a safety issue.
Well, I'm not arguing against not doing the work. I'm arguing about how it gets done and doing it economically.
We can work together on this.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll move on to the supplemental requests. So this first category is non-personnel items that are ongoing. The top table is what is included in the recommended budget as far as ongoing. So for information technology, additional IT support of 35,000. This has been something where it's been a huge struggle with having one person IT and a little bit of contract help. And in order to have the resources that we need with such a small staff and be able to have our IT tools, we really need that support as well. The general government, so during the council retreat, there was discussion about increasing the community grants. So what's in the base budget is 40,000. This is adding 20,000 to make it a total of 60,000. The law enforcement, so also discussed during the council retreat, was some additional peak season law enforcement. So I had done some calculations based off of the MCSO formulas for 3 months at 60,000. And then since then, MCSO has come up with some numbers for us and also provides some information related to 6 months, which would be 124,000. So the table down below,
How many FTE would that be?
so it would be 40 hours a week, but 3 months, so then it's the equivalent of a quarter, and then 6 months would be the equivalent during that time frame. It'd be 40 hours a week, but a half time for the year.
And we were looking at peak times, like Thursday through Saturday, when it's at its busiest.
But that's not adding an FTE to the head count, is it?
No, it's contract, so it's not our FTE.
So this is for Friday nights for the,
Yeah, during season, not like a bike week thing, but I mean, we went out a couple of months ago, the mayor and Councilmember Friedman and I. It was a Thursday night, and it was really 7:30 at night, and it was just really pretty crazy, and could have used additional law enforcement.
It was Friday.
No, it was Thursday, I believe.
No,
Was it Friday?
It's Friday night.
It was, okay.
But my understand, but I mean, it's the Buffalo Chips issue. And why would we not require them to put on people for parking?
Well, we're talking about just other additional activity. I mean, there's pedestrians that are trying to cross the road. There are people like bar hopping from one place to the other. So it's more than just, in my opinion, a parking issue. So yeah, there are issues where there's illegal parking, and we've observed that. But there's also just the mass of people. It's unbelievable the number of people we have in peak season. And I think when you have those places that close together, as we saw, it was unrelated to Bike Week, but that Friday of Bike Week, the incident that occurred, I think, while we did have law enforcement there, I think just having additional would be helpful. So again, this is a supplement. We could also see if we can get some assistance from the business community, although I don't think that they're going to want to do much to help pay for it, but we can certainly see.
What does it do for the risk pool? Say we have something because we don't have law enforcement there. What does it do to our risk pool status?
I don't want to speculate what it would do or what it wouldn't do, because we pay a rate each year based on previous.
It would negatively impact significantly our rate.
Potentially.
No, it would.
What would, if we add somebody?
No, if we don't add someone.
Oh,
I've got some comments I wanted to make about this topic while we're here regarding the entertainment district specifically. We do need more, we need people for events such as Biketoberfest and Builder Showcase, which in the past were no big deal. But if you saw the last two, there was nobody there because we never, talked about it. Those events have grown. We need to have some sheriffs out there. We need to include that in the budget as well. I don't think we need to have a 6-month period. I think we have to have a 4-month period in any special events like what they have. Also that one where they were all revving their motors and stuff. I don't know what that one was called, that upset all the neighbors. But I think we need Friday nights and Saturday nights only from January 1st through April 30th. And I'd also like to make one other comment that I've heard Councilman Augerton speak about in the past. I don't think the whole town needs to have streetlights. In fact, I'd be against that, but I think we need to actually put streetlights in from Harold probably to at least the Hideaway. And I've heard the bar owners tell me this as well. It's getting dangerous down there. There is no proper lighting currently. If we don't pull the trigger soon, it's what I like to say, it's proactive. So we need to budget for that stuff. That's pretty much all I've got to say.
Mayor, if I may, just to comment on Councilmember Friedman's comments. So I do want to let you know that when the budget was put together for the additional law enforcement, staff was thinking about events as well. So, to backfill law enforcement for those events. The other thing I also wanted to point out, a couple years ago, we had money in the budget for the median project, and the median project got done, and then there was some leftover money, and then it stayed in the budget for some potential enhancements. We budgeted and we're planning on going forward in future years, starting with next year, with 100,000. It can be increased by council and can also be aggregated. But my understanding is the Development Services Director and his staff are looking at putting together what I would call like an aesthetics plan for the core area. So for the rights of way, we can have some potential enhancements, but also it can include, as you mentioned, the lighting. It could certainly be covered in maybe some area where it has a certain look. Maybe it looks historic or something. So it kind of does two things, and maybe it matches kind of a thematic concept that we can have for the entire core area.
Well, yes, I would agree with today's world and all these kids and people wearing black. I don't know if it's a Johnny Cash thing, but they're all wearing black. And when they cross the road and they jaywalk, you don't see them. So and that's in that core area. And even one of the owners of the Hideaway, or the owner of the Hideaway, he's all over me every time I see him. Why don't you have street lights down here? And I said, I think it's a good idea. I mean, I would be personally not in favor of them past the Hideaway, but we don't really need them down there. And I think it would upset people. But definitely in the entertainment area, I mean, it's already enough energy and action down there, and not to have the safety. Again, key word here, safety, proactive. So
yeah, anything that we do would be shielded and it would not be bleeding, and it would be specific for that purpose.
You can get street lamps now that look like the old historic gas lamp.
Right.
Kind of thing.
With like beaded glass or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Do you have a time frame for that, Grady?
Well, we have the money in the budget for next year, and I think what we wanted to do was come back to council with a concept of what we could possibly do. I have to admit that council member Friedman's idea wasn't necessarily on my radar. I could check with Luke and see what his thoughts are. I have not seen what they're working on yet, but
But it's in the budget for
Yes.
FY27?
yeah, for 100,000.
Okay.
Again, it's not a lot. And then I think you really need to have a plan to kind of figure out what it would cost, and then how many years would it take to implement. And then we can figure out how much to set aside each year. But 100,000 was at least a placeholder for next year.
thank you.
On the next item, the visitor center, I have a question. How did we get the information that tourism is down? Is that per the attendees at the visitor center, or is that from the Chamber of Commerce regarding all of Cave Creek?
Mayor and Vice Mayor, it's anecdotal. It's from the Chamber of Commerce as well as the Visitor Center. And also following state trends, reading the articles saying that visitors are down all across the state. And they projected at one time, talking to some of the bed and breakfast, they said they were as much as 20% down. Now that came from Nina Spitzer from the Tourism Bureau at that time.
We're taking a big hit as a state with our Canadian visitors.
Oh. Hmm. Okay.
But our visitors at Spur Cross is at an all-time high, right?
A lot of locals, and
figure,
that's what
yeah.
we've been trying to market to
Yeah.
through our social medias to hit the Phoenix market as much as possible to get them up here. If they're not spending money, social media can't help with that. No.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, this digital marketing and advertising, it was requested to be an ongoing, but I wanted to see results and see how that was working before we would go ahead and authorize it to go this time next year as an ongoing. So it's a wait and see and determine if it's doing what it's supposed to accomplish.
Okay.
So you'd compare the increase in TPT tax and bed tax to the amount of money spent to get an ROI?
Yes. And one of the things I'm working right now with Bo is I think it's very important for us to have a tourism strategic plan, because right now we're spending money here, there, and no vision of where we're trying to go. And so, we've talked about becoming a destination marketing organization and other things like that. And until I know if it makes any sense. The other thing is I like to do, I did this in another city where I worked previously. I also had an economic impact evaluation of tourism because we had a lot of day trippers and tourists, and I want to know what the impact was, the annual dollars spent and the multiplier and all that. And so we're looking at something like that as well.
The universities offer that to do those types of studies.
Right.
So they did it for CAP.
Good.
Yes.
Okay, that would be a
Economic
great
impact for
idea.
CAP, right. ESU did it.
Yep.
All right, so moving on. So one-time supplemental requests that are non-personnel related. So top table is what's recommended. There is 50,000 included for upgrading the broadcast equipment here in the chambers. 96,000 for some consulting services related to CIP projects. That is in the budget, but with the caveat of being delayed until the results of the utility analysis is complete. This comes from a presentation that I saw and some comments made by the mayor about CIP and looking at like scope changes, change orders, initial scope, all of that, and basically it would kind of do an audit and some evaluation of our processes and help identify ways to create some efficiencies.
This is peanuts compared to what are potential savings. I support this 100%.
Yeah, the firm that we actually met, and of course this will go out on a competitive process, but Sherry hooked us up with that with all the department directors that have capital projects. And it was very eye-opening, the amount of savings that they've been able to going through and in streamlining these processes, how it really just saved millions upon millions of dollars for these different organizations.
I endorse this enthusiastically.
The next item, 80,000, and it's 4 pieces of equipment that would be partly used by utilities, partly by Public Works. And so there's a thumb attachment for the backhoe. There's a rock hammer and a light tower and a generator included in all of that. Pretty sure I remembered all those correctly. And then the street maintenance catch-up. So there's based off of the pavement management program and analysis that was done, there's 1.5 million included in the base budget as that ongoing amount, but there's still a fair amount of catch-up to be done. The request was for $1 million. And the recommendation is to take that million and split it 50-50 between fiscal year 27 and 28. So $500,000 in fiscal year 27.
We're starting to see some really good numbers. I was at a MAG management meeting last week, and they were reporting that it looks like things have not only stabilized, but they're starting to see really good contracting prices on major capital projects. And we've seen it here just in the past 6 months. So basically, the good news is I think going into the future, we're not only having pricing stabilized for capital improvement projects like roads and streets and things like that, but our money's going to go further like we've seen and how we were able to take on more projects than what we typically have been able to do in the past. So I think $500,000 this year and $500,000 next year, and then again, with the pavement management program, evaluate where we are, particularly on the backlog. And I think this is going to really be good over the next 2 years to invest an additional $1 million on top of what we're currently spending.
The bottom table is a couple of the not recommended items, one-time requests, at least not at this time, maybe in future years. So the first one, a community engagement measurement. So there are a variety of like community surveys to get a sense of how we're doing and what the community wants to see and where we can improve to meet their expectations. And then for the tourism side, the visitor center, a high-end marketing video was included in that request, but not recommended. For
So
fiscal year
the
24.
community engagement measurement, I think, is a very good tool. But we were getting to a point where we're trying to get in balance. And so I just had to make some choices here. And that was one that I thought I still want to do, but I think we'll just postpone. And I think the high-end marketing video, I hate to do this to Bo, but I think Bo could do it and save us $12,000.
I could do end marketing, not high.
Okay, and so there were a couple of personnel requests, but they are not recommended at this time. The one was a help desk technician for a part halftime. And so for now, just including that as part of the additional contract support. And a position split between development services and public works for an engineering plan review technician was not recommended at this point in time as well.
I know that, I think Carefree, I think they do all their engineering, plan reviews outside. You might see if you have, if you get stuck in a spot where we're overloaded, you might see what they're doing.
Good idea. Hal, I think you have some dollars in your professional services, correct?
Can I bring up another professional service that's been discussed in the past? Are we still thinking about a procurement officer?
It's in the budget right now.
Thank you.
And recruitment has, I think, just about wrapped up on that, correct?
I think interviews are supposed to be soon.
There's Carlos there.
think
That's a
we-
good.
Sorry.
Sorry. I was just going to say, it's maybe this is the time to ask. Grady had provided us a list of all the open positions at this point in time, and it troubled me to see how many we had, and I was just wondering if we made any progress on filling. What was it? I'm sorry.
If people stop leaving, we only have a couple more positions to fill, but we have had long recruitment times. And some of that is we're not getting the level of applicant that we're looking for. And some of it, I think, is because we're an outlier in the community. So it is a long commute for a lot of people. But we are pushing out every platform we can get to. The league's been a really good directory to send folks over to us. So we're making headway.
I know that Ivan was put to work over the weekend.
Yeah.
On a couple of different, in the middle of the night crises.
No, true. So Jordan, who was Roxy's replacement, she came on. We also have Dale, who is our accountant. That position we've gone through 2 accountants, and he seems to be working out really well.
Yeah, we're very happy with him.
And then we were able to help expedite filling one of the customer service. It's one of the accounting technicians.
Accounting technician.
You want to
So,
explain that one too?
so it's one of the front counter positions in finance that would be dealing with utility billing aspects, but also like accounts payable and things like that. And we did some interviews last week, and I did not have an opportunity today to call the person that I want to make the offer to, so that'll happen tomorrow.
He or she is waiting for that call, you know.
I know.
And to help expedite, we had the one recruitment that had similar types of competencies and job skills that were required. So we were able to take that existing list that we just had completed for hiring Jordan, that she was able to find some similarities there. So we were able to jumpstart that.
Yeah.
And then I know Sean is working on a particular position where the employee has gotten additional certifications, and he won't get his next one probably until December, but we're kind of holding a position open for that kind of situation so we could do a promotion from within. So I think we're making some progress now. There's obviously, the invitation for bid has kind of caused some consternation and concern for employees. We've met with employees a couple times to try to give them reassurances. But that is something that has happened.
Grady, the status of the government affairs representative? Is that moving still or?
So it is, but nothing has happened with it. In other words, it's on my back burner, but I will have that done well before the next session.
Did you get funding in here for that, or are you just using discretionary authority?
I'm sorry.
Money.
Did you get that iterated in this budget request, or do you have?
We had the dollars, existing dollars. I didn't need to ask for any additional. The other thing was I was waiting till Kristen next door, the new town administrator of Carefree, was settled, and then I was going to approach her on this as well. It's also potentially a topic for when we have a joint meeting, because we're looking at tentatively October for our two councils to meet. And you're always looking for topics, and this is one that I think would be a home run for both.
So would that be an FTE or is that a contract?
Oh, it would absolutely be a contract. Yeah, we're looking at a firm that we would use.
I have a technical question. How do we determine when we have live stream versus when we tape and post the next day? Our meetings.
So because of the amount of resources, having just one person here, we generally do it for just official meetings. Now, we had last week's meeting, it was a question, and I said, you know what, I think we need to record it, and then we can have it be available for people who are not there to watch later. But we're very limited on the live streaming just because it takes a lot of resources for that. So I try to keep it limited just to our, I'm sorry.
Human resources or other resources?
Yeah, staffing.
Staff.
Right.
But we could tape it and we don't have to have a staff person here.
No, you really need to have, yeah, because you're going to be sometimes switching presentations into what is being recorded, and you need to have the audio, and you just can't trust that it's going to happen on its own.
I guess that's my point. Maybe I'm not saying it well enough. To tape it and post it the next day, does it still require a person to be here, Brian? So why couldn't we just stream it? Streaming takes more than that?
Well, it's part of the thing is then you build expectations for people that they want to be able to interact and respond to questions and such like that. So I think it's almost better not to live stream certain types of meetings. Because you start doing it for something, and then all of a sudden there will be an expectation that then our official council meetings, which we live stream, that they can participate and ask questions that way. And it just adds a whole level of complexity.
I get it. Okay. That answers that.
Okay. So that was the last slide on the supplemental requests. Any other questions on any of those supplemental requests? Okay, so it is almost 5. The departmental based budgets, I would think like
What don't we?
half hour, 45 minutes.
No, I think we should do that tomorrow.
Yeah, let's I'm gonna move that we table that until tomorrow and do and quit on time at 5. Any objections, or you want to put it to a vote, or?
No, that's good. 2 hours.
Do it.
everybody. Right.
Okay, so any other final here on what we've seen so far today? And then I'll move to close the meeting.
I'm good.
You have questions here? Okay, I move that we adjourn. All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thanks, Mayor Council. This probably, I think, as Sherry is saying, will probably be 30, 40 minutes tomorrow. And of course, there's the time following it for you guys to provide additional direction and such. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.